Last year we attended. We sent a few delegates last year to DevOps Talks in March 2017, and we came here then because we were embarking on our DevOps journey then. We were looking at reshaping our teams and the way we do things. And we came here and we found it quite useful and quite insightful and influential in the way that we went about things over the course of last year. So this year we came back for two reasons and sponsored for one of those reasons. One was again to learn some more, but also to try and give back because we had learnt quite a bit and we thought that perhaps we can share some of our journey. And so this year we had Ben Mustafa, our engineering manager, talking about some of our journey, some of the ways that we went about building our distributed system. And so we thought that's us imparting some of our knowledge and experience back to the community, but also we're here to learn. I'm a big supporter and fan of the conference itself. Like I said, we came here to learn last year. We're back again and sponsoring this year because we learnt a tremendous amount. There are some things that even this year we're finding quite insightful, particularly things like the two talks about SRE. We thought that was quite insightful, and that helps us in our next evolution as we continue our journey down getting DevOps right. But also things like Peter's talk on serverless. There's a lot of insightful things there that are useful to our team, and some of the things that we're tinkering with we find really, really handy. So we're looking forward to coming back next year and learning some more and contributing some more.
Elizabeth is the Vice President and DevOps Security at CyberArk. Elizabeth is responsible for CyberArk's DevOps business strategy and execution. Prior to CyberArk, Elizabeth was the CEO and co-founder of Conjur, a DevOps security company acquired by CyberArk in May 2017. She has over 20 years experience working in highly regulated and sensitive data environments. And prior to founding Conjur, Elizabeth was Chief Data Officer of Generation Health and held a leadership position in research at the Department of Veterans Affairs. She's been a programmer herself and is constantly working to help organizations move to a true DevSecOps delivery model that supports greater business agility. And she's a member of the Mass TLC Security Advisory Board. So please welcome Elizabeth to the stage.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me. Thank you, Igor and the team of DevOps Talks, to invite me to Melbourne. I got to escape 18 inches of snow in Boston, so I took them up on that offer. And thank you all for coming out this morning and not choosing to go see the Grand Prix test laps, although I could hear them from my room last night. So I appreciate, can you bring up the slide notes? I appreciate everybody having me here. Just to add a little bit to the introduction that you've heard before, Elizabeth Lawler, VP of DevOps Security at CyberArk. I'm a cybersecurity enthusiast after having worked for 15 years in the Department of Veterans Affairs, where we were constantly under attack by the Chinese, by Chinese hackers and other organized nation-state actors. I'm also a DevOps enthusiast because I've seen the transformative power of DevOps in being able to give my technical team superpowers and deliver faster and better. And I'm very focused on delivering a better security user experience. It's something so that it's easy to do the right thing from a security perspective when you're trying to move fast and be agile. For the last few years, I've been talking about machine identity, talking and writing about machine identity, access control, authorization, and I'm happy to say I'm also the steward of an open source project, which is Conjur. After the acquisition of Conjur in May of 2017, CyberArk made the bold decision to open source our next generation platform and release it as an open source project. It was always the mission of Conjur to do this, and I think it's a brave and bold move that 3 months after you pay a fair amount of money for a startup, that you end up giving the technological capabilities away for the betterment of everyone. And I think, and I believe JFrog, who Yov was speaking yesterday, was one of our sponsors when we open sourced our platform. And it represents a deep understanding, I think, on the part of security people in a security company, moving into a DevOps space where open source is the norm and working as a community to improve security together is the expectation. So, why is this so interesting, to talk about DevOps and the business transformation initiatives that are associated with DevOps? And, I think really, the philosophy, methodologies, and technologies of DevOps really matter today in the business world. The business environment has a growing understanding that every business is a software business. I was just at one of, I think, Australia's largest companies, a mining company here in Melbourne, and they have massive digital transformations going on. And DevOps is a key and core strategy for that organization. Companies across all industries, from financial services to retail to manufacturing, et cetera, are all embracing DevOps as a competitive advantage. And the most innovative companies are adopting velocity to bring new applications and new paradigms and new types of architectures for software to market faster. And in fact, companies that deliver code faster experience greater revenue growth year over year compared to companies who are not as agile or operating slower. And this is what makes it interesting. This is what makes it interesting to security people, because this is what hackers are interested in. Hackers are interested in identifying and understanding where they can get the most leverage in your organization. So whether it's ransomware or other forms of attack to find IP, to go and fish around inside of your systems, to gain a competitive advantage, this success that DevOps has delivered to the market is exactly what's driving interest from cyber criminals. So as you're embracing these new digital transformation initiatives, the things are moving from an old way of working to a new way of working. And security, I think has been pointed out, is a little bit slow to keep up. But as you're increasingly adopting cloud-native infrastructure, you're fundamentally changing how applications are developed and deployed, security has to be delivered and maintained in ways to support those initiatives. The Department of No is over. I think everyone understands that the security department being a blocker to agility and velocity is no longer a tenable position. So now what security companies and security products and security teams are now doing is trying to figure out how to net into your process and your organization. So the two key things are security as being part of a cloud-native application design and software delivery process, but also being able, for security people to make the transition, they've often gone from being able to understand or characterize security vulnerabilities as static endpoints, right? I can count the number of servers in a data center. I can count the number of people I need to manage or control. But now when you're dealing with ephemeral infrastructure, dynamic services, clouds and containers that only live for milliseconds, you can't use the same types of barrier methods of control in order to be able to secure those environments. So the lifespan of the systems, who interacts with them, what interacts with them, has all changed. And moving from that monolithic type approach, where you had no number of systems and you could use waterfall methods in order to create security controls, no longer apply. So if you think about it, the old way that people used to monitor people who are systems who are interacting and making changes in live production systems were things like keystroke logging or session recording. But that's no longer necessary if you're using code to manage your infrastructure, right? So those types of old security paradigms are things that people are now having to think about how we're going to move away, but still have the same level of control and understanding of what's being executed on the box. And so all of this is really highlighting what we found out in our global threat, threat survey that was conducted by CyberArk last year. I think, so it's interesting because, it's interesting because I'm usually the DevOps person at the security conference, but now I get to be the security person at the DevOps conference. So this is told from the security perspective. This is the security professional's point of view. We conducted a survey of about 1,300 IT and security professionals around the globe, and we asked them about, basically what was their view into DevOps and security issues. And getting deep with the DevOps teams is not something that we heard from security teams that they were up to. So by show of hands, how many of you have embedded security team members in your DevOps teams? It's a smattering. How many of you actively fear your security teams? Like, don't talk to them, avoid them in the hallway? A couple two hands up in the back there. So really what we, you know, every security team knows that their CTO has gotten up, or their CIO has gotten up, or their CEO has gotten up and said, we're doing a digital transformation. They understand intellectually that you're building cloud-native applications, but it isn't something that we see security is totally embedded with yet. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We often see companies doing digital transformation initiatives, especially when they have rather robust security departments under things called risk exceptions. You may be subject to some of these yourselves. And that means you get to work outside the parameters of the common security and compliance framework so that you can get your job done and you can deliver your platform or your tool or whatever. And that means the security team's kind of not in your business. Now the problem, and maybe they're failing to assist you. But when that happens, with or without the consent of your board, and you have some kind of massive breach like Uber, all of a sudden everything you've been building, all the security controls you've been passively interacting with, now all come to the limelight. And you may find yourself racing to clean up some technical security debt that you may not have even known you had. So because 51% of security professionals say they basically have no relationship with you, and by show of hands, I'd say you guys don't have a relationship with them, we have a huge organizational gulf here that we need to start to close. And you know, so I can give you a concrete example. This comes from my own personal area of interest. The Verizon Breach Report, which comes out annually, talks about the major sources of breaches and data breaches and compromises. And 90% of all breaches involve privileged account, some sort of super user account or privileged system administrator account, or that's been compromised in order to exfiltrate data. And so 75% of security professionals say their organization doesn't have any plan in place to secure privileged accounts in DevOps environments. So if 90% of the attacks are coming through this vector, all the cybersecurity criminals are looking at your stuff because it's where the money is going, and 75% don't have a plan in place, that means that everybody's at risk. And as a person with a background actually in public health, I think a lot about risk on a kind of population level, and I think that this is one of the most interesting areas to work in right now. And it really isn't much better for cloud. Our findings show that 50% of security professionals indicate they don't have a privileged account security plan in place for cloud. So this is where attackers are looking. Now, you know, so basically, security professionals did express as part of this a willingness to, you know, interface with DevOps teams, a willingness to engage in the digital transformation, business owners, and trying to adopt more technical and engineering expertise so that they can engage more effectively with folks who are running DevOps processes and agile software delivery processes that are driving the business forward. So the Department of No, totally dead. Landscape is moving too fast for them to keep up, though. So if you think about it, there's often a resource constraint issue here, where security teams may have a better ear with the board of directors or other governance and oversight groups in order to get you help from a security perspective for the business. So yeah, I wanted to just make one comment about, I think this is really the question. So you guys, because you don't have any women and men, because nobody raised their hand and said they had a strong relationship with the security team. The security team says they don't have a strong relationship with you. I guess the question is, are you all feeling ready to handle what's coming your way from an attacker's perspective? And to sort of drive that point home, I'm going to share a video that was conducted by one of my colleagues in CyberArk Labs. He's a red team guy. That highlights, essentially, how attackers are viewing the opportunity to exploit DevOps tools. So this is a Puppet exploit demo by Lavi of CyberArk. Most attacks start with phishing one of you. It could be social engineering. It could be scanning your GitHub. It could be looking for you on LinkedIn, trying to figure out what your passwords may be. If you're working in a company and there's a nation-state attacker going after you, they will get your password. Once they've compromised a login or password or even bypassed some sort of two-factor auth method, they are now you. So I'm just going to highlight what I see as a security maturity curve, then I'll scare you. Which is that, once you're moving from, call it sort of the on-prem mentality of security controls, where things are very human-centric or system account-centric, and into essentially what is becoming hybrid DevOps and on-prem world, you get this kind of explosion of threat surface, right? Because you have many interconnected systems, some of which are back on-prem, subject to Windows threats, some of which are going to be in the cloud, subject to Linux-based threats or cloud misconfiguration. And so, really, it's the point at which the adoption is new and the number of tools are exploding where you have the greatest friction amongst trying to manage and control security across multiple environments and actually being able to deliver the velocity that you're looking for. So, for example, there's a threat, not one we're going to show today, but there's a video on one of our YouTubes where we have our red team move laterally from the ADU environment into the AWS environment, because they compromised an administrator and were able to move across those two environments, compromise the keys, and then I think we used it for Bitcoin mining or something like that for a couple minutes just to prove the point. But, I think many people are really just not aware of the risks associated with this kind of complex hybrid environment that we're working in right now. And very few organizations have really gotten to the upper right-hand corner, but obviously it's the DevOps names like Netflix. Many people are like, I have 99 problems, being Netflix is not one. But the end game and desired future state is that actually you're able to automate inline most of your security controls in such a way that you really have reduced your threat surface, and that especially that threat surface across different kinds of accounts, across different VPCs, across different user groups is minimized, and that's the highest level of security profile. So in the meantime. I want to just reference the SANS Institute. They have a great white paper on DevOps security controls. And it's great primer if this is the first time you're thinking about this. It talks about all these 8 different security elements. Obviously, the last defense is logging in and actually getting the crown jewels. They go through, the usual suspects. You have a cloud network perimeter. Every cloud has one, right? Amazon VPC, Google VPC, Azure. Yet the most notable breaches of recent memory have all had to do with misconfiguration of the VPC, right? This is a process problem. It's not a tooling problem. It's an ownership problem and it's a maintenance problem. It's not a technology problem. I just went back on that. Sorry about that. The report also delineates issues regarding use of risky VMs, poorly maintained containers, default accounts, unnecessary services, unpatched software, things like that would be an example of the Mongo breach, right? Admin passwords, default open. And that means you guys are on the front lines of all of this now. And so, can you scroll down a little bit on my notes? So being able to make sure that you haven't deployed default accounts, et cetera, into your images is really important. Administrative console security, that's where that breach started from, right? Which is compromise of essentially the non-programmatic access to Puppet. So, when you're trying to reduce your threat surface, thinking about a least privilege approach, separation of duties, always enforcing multi-factor authentication. This was the initial point of entry for the Tesla breach, right? Where Tesla Kubernetes console was compromised and someone used it to mine Bitcoin. That's actually, Bitcoin mining is much more common now than we see people using it for people using other people's compute for overt malicious attacks. In our estimation, it takes under 5 minutes for a posted AWS key to be used by Bitcoin miners now if you post it to GitHub. How many of you had that happen? Somebody lock you out of your AWS account because they just maxed out all your compute? That's often how people find out about that breach, actually, is that they've accidentally posted an AWS key into GitHub, and all of a sudden they can't log in. But then, the place where we find most DevOps teams are the most mature, and I think this was supported by the SANS Institute's report, is in code analysis, right? Looking for things that are related to OWASP, cross-site scripting, et cetera. Those are the places where we see the most integration of automation tools into the DevOps tool chain. But still, you see the Apache struts flaw in Equifax, for example. So it's an imperfect system nonetheless. So why is it an imperfect system? Well, we all know there should be perimeter security. We know we should be doing code analysis for vulnerabilities. We know we should be enforcing privileged user access controls across the console and stuff. It's just, is it just possible in our release to deploy that you guys are just doing too much? That you're too responsible for too many different aspects of the system? And if you're not partnered with your security team, you're having to bear the responsibility for all of this. And you're also responsible for it if it goes wrong. I recently read a blog post that talked about what are some of the skills that a DevOps manager needs. And one of them was being able to manage through a breach. And I thought, isn't there another team in your organization that can help you manage through a breach that are really skilled in it? And how people think, how security people think, and how DevOps people think about how to manage a breach could be different. So for example, say I had posted my AWS credential into a GitHub account, and somebody compromised it, and now they have launch boxes in AWS, and I'm the DevOps person who's responsible. My immediate inclination might be to revoke the key and rotate, right? But your security team might say, you know what? We now are worried about what the legal or liability implications of whatever those boxes are doing might be, because they're affiliated with our account. They might not want you to rotate right away. They might not actually want you to shut the attacker down. They might want to go in and observe what the attacker is doing before you rotate. So that's why partnering with a security team in these types of events, at those kinds of moments, is really powerful. And if they know how your tools work and they know how you work, they can help you manage through that event even better. So the recommendation here is that each one of these domains requires you as DevOps practitioners, in conjunction with your security counterparts, to take a hard look at your processes and take a pragmatic approach to starting to continuously deliver and continuously improve against all of these domains. And what's the area of risk? How prevalent is it? What's the level of our concern? What do we want to do about it? And doing a threat analysis or risk analysis shouldn't be an academic exercise. If your security friend is sitting there spouting off esoteric random security flaws to you, throw them the Phoenix Project and tell them to chill out, and actually take a page from that and start dealing and start being inclusive and dive deep, but also be practical and pragmatic and start with the things that make the most sense to you and your organization. So Lavi's video showed you this one threat vector. He compromised Puppet to think about how an attacker would use Puppet to inject malicious code, et cetera. But that's just one area. We're really looking at a web of totally interconnected services when you're in that big blue ball of hybrid DevOps and non-DevOps environments, where you've got workstations and you've got your on-premise data center, and you've got your cloud apps and your continuous delivery pipeline that could be running on-premise or in the cloud. You've got SaaS apps that are all connected. And so when we founded Conjur, we founded it with the thesis that code was the new privileged user. And that meant that they would be the point that you could control the security risk. And if I could teach, formerly when it was a person, I could teach you, watch you, control you, monitor you, try and change your behavior. Not so much anymore. Now I need to look at the code and monitor its behavior, and who can work with it, and how they can push it, and how does it move through the pipeline. So adopting more flexible infrastructure and application architectures has its advantages, but also means that you have these coded actors. So when you look at a threat analysis of this system, this is what it looks like to a security person. These are all the different places where I could send my red team in to compromise. So all the keys you control, all the access, what's upstream in GitHub, et cetera, essentially forms this new landscape. Another form of speed up that we often see in DevOps environments is that people concentrate all this risk, all this key management, all this access control into one person, probably you. You have all the keys. They're all on your laptop. Is that where all the private keys are? You become a human controller of security. And that is also a single point of failure approach. And it's also antithetical to DevOps patterns, which are resilient. The hit by a bus problem. So our goal as security professionals working with DevOps teams is to make sure that no matter what you've built, no matter what your infrastructure looks like or your application, if you've got key sprawl, overprivilege, that you can continuously meet your security goals without compromising velocity. And so I think the fundamental mentality now among security professionals has changed, that security serves the application, not the other way around. But thinking like an attacker is a full-time job. It's one of the hottest areas of practice now. So if you want to flip over to the other team, there are many jobs out there for you.